the Sky News Centre, this is Paul Murray Live.
G'day, good evening. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Thursday, wherever you happen to be. The Victorian government has banned Sky News. You've heard it many times throughout the day because the Transport Minister didn't decide to make an announcement quietly. She decided to do it on Twitter, thinking that she was playing to the peanut gallery who think that the walls are closing in on Sky News and this could be one of the final cuts to the operation. She didn't just do a Twitter announcement, she held a press conference. And the announcement was that Sky News will be banished from the train platforms of the CBD in Melbourne. All, of course, because of what happened here on Sunday night. All, of course, because of the Blair Cottrell interview. Now, there's no part of me that can justify what happened here on Sunday night. There's no part of me that doesn't understand that when mistakes are made, prices must be paid. I understand that. But this wasn't about that, you see, because the minister flat out lied about why Sky News is banned on the train platforms of Melbourne. She thought, or at least was willing to tell the public, that the very interview that we had with Blair Cottrell here on Sunday night, one that we have all said was the wrong thing to do, 1,000,000 times over, one that I would certainly not do on this program, that interview was, of course, not just shown, but shown over and over and over again on the train platforms of Melbourne. Well, that's a lie. You see, the difference between what you are watching right now, live on Foxtel, live on Australia Channel, live on the Foxtel app, what you might be listening to as the podcast at skynews.com.au, that's not what is shown on the trains of Melbourne. Instead, on the trains of Melbourne, you get a news bulletin. The opinion programs are not shown. What happened today, what happened in sport, and a preview of the weather, that's it. It's completely separate than anything we have ever done here in the evil night time of Sky News. But of course, when pushed today by our own people here at Sky News, well, that justification simply melted away. Have a look at the Transport Minister in Victoria thinking that she was on a home run when she ended up scoring an own goal.
What content exactly have people complained about? Because we're talking about news bulletins at train stations, an update on the day's news and weather. No interviews, no comment.
Well, there is a number of there have been a number of complaints about the content that people find that people haven't appreciated, haven't liked, have taken offence to, and there's a long list of that.
Can you give me any specific examples of things that have gone to air in train stations that people have complained about?
Well, it's the material that has been screened on these TV screens that are in our city loop that people haven't appreciated. And I think, Laura, there's a pretty long list that is well known, whether it's material that is out of step with what people's views are.
What? The news? Here's what happened today, here's what happened in the AFL, and here's what the weather's going to be like? That's all that's ever been seen. She was more than willing to lie. But we all know what really happened here. The most offensive part of the news bulletins that Sky News was producing that ended up on the train platforms of Melbourne was the logo, was the place from whence it came. Because there are an awful lot of people who are out to wipe Sky News off the map. And they'll pretend that they want to do it because they think every little thing is exceptional, or we hit too hard here, or we don't hit enough there, or we say the wrong thing here, or we interview the wrong person there. No. Sky News is paying the price for pushing back on the Andrews government. Daniel Andrews is the most left-wing premier that Victoria has ever had. He is a preview of what Bill Shorten will be as Prime Minister. We are paying the price for pushing back because we in the night time and they cover it as news in the daytime because it is news. That this is the state where safe schools was able to flourish. This is the state where the power station gets blown up and your power bill goes through the roof and the government cheers it on. This is the state where crime is out of control, where because the upper echelons of police are more politicians than police these days, they don't say what's really going on. They don't tell you what the African gang problem was until, of course, they had a task force to look into African gangs. This is the government who said it was okay for people to shoot up ice in an injecting room, but God forbid if you light a cigarette. And this is the government that this program has held account for a $55 million election funding rort. That's what Sky News is paying the price for. We're not paying the price for Blair Cottrell or when a presenter has gone too far over the line or because some people have complained about it. We're paying the price because we push back. Now, I have had the incredible honour of my professional life, which is to come into your homes every night for the past 10 years. I was the first person to do opinion on Sky News. Remember when it was just the Friday night show for half an hour? Then it became an hour. Then it became 5 nights a week. Then it became 2 hours. And over the past 10 years, it has been an absolute privilege to see the guests of this program go on to become hosts in and of their own right, and they have all flourished. And all of them have done exactly what I have done for 10 years. And that's tell you the truth as we see it. Those truths can be uncomfortable, they can be unpopular, and sure, they may be even at times too hot to handle. But I can guarantee you this, Daniel Andrews. You cannot wipe away Sky News. You cannot wipe away the people who watch Sky News. You cannot turn the city of Melbourne into a hipster enclave. You cannot turn the entire state of Victoria into a nice laneway coffee bar. You can't force people to use words like they rather than he and she. You can't force people to think the way you do. Because if we use the ultimate leftist logic, Sky News is such a small minnow that it's worth ignoring. Well, that would mean that we qualify for absolute protection under the Andrews government, doesn't it? Because that would make us a minority. And you're all about protecting the minorities, aren't you, Daniel Andrews? Unless, of course, it's the one that you think are irritants, the one that you think push too hard, the ones that cause you trouble. Now, I repeat, for 10 years I've had the honour of doing this show. I've done it when the cleaner, remember when all we had was the little plasma screen and the glass behind us, and the cleaner every single night at 9 o'clock, even if we asked them not to, still was vacuuming behind us. That's the sort of growth we've had in this show, to this Star Trek-like set that I stand on here today. And the reason they are attacking Sky News at this point in time, sure, we've given them an excuse, but the reason they think they're going in for the killer blow now, be it the Andrews government or the rest of the left, is because Sky News is about to get a whole lot stronger. In the first week of September, we go to free-to-air television. And I can guarantee you, when as many people in Australia get access to this service, they will love it. And they won't love it because we hand out racist red meat. They will love it because we tell the truth. They will love it because someone, somewhere, is pushing back. Now, it doesn't bother me that our competitors in the media have a business model that is to demonise us, is to pretend that we are nothing but the sum of our worst parts. Well, can I tell you, as I have told you for 10 years, this is a place where our boss and the bosses above them, when we were owned by Channel 7 and Channel 9 and now owned by News Corporation, they have always given us autonomy and authorship over what we say. Andrew Bolt doesn't tell me what to say. I don't tell Andrew Bolt what to say. Peter Cridland doesn't tell me what to say. I don't tell Peter what to say. Laura doesn't tell me what to say. I don't tell Laura what to say. David Spears doesn't tell Laura. Do you get it? It's like a newspaper where the individual columnists have their own piece of real estate, and that's all we control. We don't work like these television stations or radio stations where one person is more powerful than the other and is running off to the boss, and people are suddenly being sacked because they disagree with the line of the top rating host or the richest. It doesn't happen. Now, I get it. My worldview is not shared by everyone. That's not breaking news to anyone. And if you agree with me 100% of the time, well, you're not even me. Because we evolve, we change. Can I give you a guarantee that no one ever in the future of Sky News will go too far? No. Can I give you the guarantee or the promise that one day I won't put my foot over the line? No. Not because that's what we set out to do, but because the line is so often redrawn. What was acceptable 20 years ago isn't acceptable now. Fine, fair enough. That's what the Me Too movement's all about teaching us. But I'm not going to have that line drawn by a politician. I'll have that line drawn by you, the viewer. And I mean the Sky News viewer. Not the person who's never watched us, who's never heard us. Those people, well, sure, they can do whatever they want on Twitter. They can keep clicking away and donating to The Guardian. They can do whatever they want to do. But we strap ourselves in for 2 hours every single night, and I try to fire up for the Australia that you care about and that I care about. And it's a sign of success when a politician is so scared of the news because it comes from the same place as the opinion that they want to pull the plug. Well, unlike when he blows up a power station, this joint only gets stronger from these sorts of attacks. You, the viewer, become even more connected and loyal to this place. And from the bottom of my heart, and from my family who you take care of, thank you. Thank you for your loyalty. Thank you to our bosses for the freedom that they give us. And thank God we live in a country where you can push back. Can you know what you think? At any time, email pmurray@skynews.com.au. I know I was a little long there, Liz, but it's been building and building and building for some time. Elizabeth Tilley in Brisbane, what do we need to know? Let's get straight into it now. Right around the country, Bronwyn Bishop, as always, carryover chant. On a Thursday night, waiting patiently as I drone on, is none other than Senator Jane Hume, Liberal Victoria, the President of the Liberal Party in Victoria, Michael Kroger, and the Qatar Australia Party Senator, Fraser Anning, who joins us from Brisbane. Well, I've had my bit, now it's yours. Michael Kroger, why does Andrews think he can get away with it, and why did they think... This wasn't just a decision. They wanted to trumpet this decision. They thought there was virtue in trumpeting this decision and distorting what it was that they were banning from Melbourne today.
Well, I'm going to surprise you and tell you why they did it, and we're getting this information out of disgruntled people in the ALP. It didn't go quite right because she made a complete fool of herself, and we've seen it on Sky this afternoon. It was an embarrassing train wreck by Jacinta Allen, who had no idea what she was talking about, and David Spears just skewered the minister during those interviews, as did Laura Jays.
That was great.
It was gut wrenching. It was sickening to watch if you were a Labor person. But I'll tell you why they've done this, and you might think this is conspiratorial, but this is what we've learnt. The Labor government in Victoria, the Andrews government, ministers and party members are under investigation by the fraud and extortion squad of the Victorian police for basically stealing money from the Victorian public, for breaking the law. Now, a number of staffers have been arrested. In due course, we would expect that members of the MPs and ministers might be questioned. The police minister and the Attorney General are both under investigation by the fraud and extortion squad and have not stood down. This is probably the biggest crisis we've seen in Victorian politics in my lifetime. How do they stop the media and the public concentrating on this absolute scandal-riddled Victorian government, where the Premier should have resigned by now, his ministers should have resigned? What do, Paul? They do something ridiculous, outrageous and embarrassing like this, which says, look over there, look over there. Oh, don't look at the fraud and extortion investigation. So what you do is, this is an old political trick, this is a Richard Nixon trick, which is when they're getting close, to the centre of the problem, you just have a diversionary tactic, something ridiculous, absurd and outrageous. You cop flack for it, and it didn't go right today. As I said, it was a complete balls up by Jacinda Allen. But Paul, that's what we think is happening here.
Sure.
No one in their right mind would ban a news organisation from train stations. But what people have been saying in Victoria today is it's lunacy, it's outrageous, it's absurd. The minister made a fool of herself. Why would they do it? They've completely changed the narrative for a whole day. They've got you talking about it all tonight on Sky. The press tomorrow is all talking about this ridiculous thing, and they're not talking about a fraud and extortion investigation, and that's why we think they've done it.
Oh, absolutely. And look, they sharpen our focus to talk about nothing but Victorian politics between now and November for the next 108 days. But also the consequence of the distraction is, and this is what matters to me on top of all of this here, Bronwyn, and look, much of that is, of course, a generic defence I've been boiling on for a very long time, and I could go the whole hour, I really could have. But it's the fact that they decided to get rid of a news bulletin. Because the news bulletin, guess what it would have covered? It would have covered the obvious, which was police raid MPs. It would have covered gangs in north of Melbourne. So that's what they've... So they've not only taken out a source of information in the lead up to an election, they've tried to play the virtue signal along the way, pretending that it's all about opinion and all the rest of it.
And gone a step further and said, we won't replace it with a news bulletin.
And that's... Yes.
And that was the real thing. And she gave herself away utterly when she said, we've taken this opportunity. In other words, Andrews didn't even have the guts to go out and do it himself. He set this poor person who is supposed to be a minister and should be sacked immediately because of incompetence, thought it was a piece of cake and went out there and just made an absolute fool of herself and lied. Absolutely lied.
Absolutely. Of which there'll be no consequence. But there's no consequence when the police raid the officers. There's no consequence when...
And there's no arrest from the African gang attacks yesterday.
Correct. And this is the thing where Fraser Anning, obviously, I know it's Melbourne, I get all of this business, but let's be honest here, is that when a government swipes out against a news organisation, if it was of the left, there would be, mass walkouts. But because it's, dirty little Sky News, they'll do their best to sort of move on here. What do you think this means about what Andrews was trying to do today?
Well, Paul, I think it's probably the worst case of socialist censorship I've heard of in Australia. I can't believe that they're doing this. I got to tell you, if it wasn't for Sky News, yourself, Paul, Andrew, Ross and Rowan and Peter and others, we'd be starved for an unbiased view of the world. So we may not always agree on everything, but at least you and we get a chance to air our views, and you guys air your views, and that's the way a democracy should work. This is just lunacy. The guy is a lunatic, I think. I mean, he's destroying his own state and trying to rebuild it in the status model. So he's got more problems than he can think of, and I agree wholeheartedly. He should have handed in his badge long ago.
But sorry, Bronwyn, go for it.
Paul, one of the reasons that I outed socialism so strongly is because it is an insidious, destructive, evil philosophy. And it always ends in totalitarianism and death. That's the final extremes. Whether it's National Socialism of Germany or communism in Russia or mass socialism in China or the original intellectual socialism of George Bernard Shaw, who was the one who said every individual should have to justify themselves to the state, and if they can't do it, then they should be put down, eliminated, kindly, and asked for a gas to be invented so that they could be put down kindly. That's what socialism is. This man here wants to be the dictator of Victoria. He wants to tell people what they will do, what they will think, whether it's a pronoun, whether it's a sex education, whatever it is, he wants to be the dictator and you are not allowed to think. And as you said, this is a pushback area where people have opinions, are permitted to express them, so that people know there is something else that they can believe in. There is something else that they can say, and they can vote against him.
Well, and my thing too is that, you know, I live in the country where the best idea should be able to win, but I live in a country where your idea mightn't always win. It's just the whole point about your ability to express it. That's the whole thing, is that the absolute misnomer, Jane Hume, about opinion, be it in the newspaper, or be it on television, or be it on talkback radio, is the idea that, you know, as if I've got this view of myself like I'm Moses and I'm punching out the 10 Commandments and all must follow. No, I'm a bloke with a camera who likes to push back. At the end of the night, you agree or disagree. If you listen to Radio National Breakfast tomorrow, fine. That's the way it works. There's no other expectation here.
Undoubtedly, Paul, this is retribution. But beyond that, Jacinda Allen has appointed herself Minister for Media Censorship. Extraordinary, considering she's supposed to be the Minister for Transport. Now, in a government where 6 of your ministers are under investigation by the fraud and extortion squad in the police, you would think that the Minister for Transport in a highly congested city where there is gridlock everywhere would get on with the job at hand less than 100 days, or just over 100 days out before a state election. How about you make the trains run on time? Correct. How about, rather than, you know, telling us what we can watch at the station, you actually make sure the trains turn up, that they don't break down when it's more than 35 degrees or less than 10 degrees, which it often is in Melbourne. So, you know, how about, she's got a very big job to do, and this is what she's chosen. This is what she's chosen to focus on. It beggars belief, this government's priorities. The good news is we get a chance to vote them out, and it's not that far away.
Well, we'll see. And look, I mean, see, this is where inevitably those that are sitting there wanting to put us in the box, right? They will turn around automatically and go, well, you know, none of you have said sorry for what happened on Sunday. Look, we've taken our licks, and rightly so, for what happened here on Sunday for 4 days. All right? None of us are unaware of when somebody has crossed the line. None of us are unaware of that. But in the same way that when the ABC went too far, nobody was shutting it down when they had Blair Cottrell on. There was no campaigns against getting rid of ABC 24 in Federation Square. That's why it's a get square about everything else that we do here. And just if I can add one last thing to what I said at the start about this joint, and this has been, you know, I'll be honest, about an hour every single day. For the past few months, I have had to go through a process of the Defence of Sky editorial. Do I do it tonight? How do I say it? What's this, that and the other? And I know that it's self-indulgent, but I just want to say what I said to younger members of staff in the past few days who've been battered up, and I want them to always feel proud that they worked here, right? I want them to feel proud that they worked here. I want them to feel respected that they worked here. But I also never want them to feel accountable for what I say on the air. I don't want it to reflect on them personally or individually. I have, again, great respect for how this joint works. Nothing like it works like this in Australian television, where the autonomy, the independence, the freedom, and yes, the accountability is there. But I'll just say to the leftists who think that you have done us in this week, no way. We are about to get a whole lot stronger, and Fraser Anning, as you know, once we are able to get to even more people in regional Queensland, that's when we start to supercharge. That's when people who have really not had the option are going to start to have it, and you know what they're going to do when they get it. It's not going to become their whole media diet, but they're going to like what they see at night, not because it's a town of crazies, but because it's a bunch of people who talk like they do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Paul. That's where I come from, rural and regional Queensland, and I know exactly how those people think, and you'll have a massive audience there. I'd say you nearly get 100% of them, I would think, and they'll happily turn off the left-wing channels that show you programs like Q&A, that you couldn't find a more biased left-wing program if you tried. So Absolutely, you'll be watched everywhere in the bush, I can tell you.
Well, we'll do all that we can. Look, I get it, it's self-indulgent, it's all about us, but it's not just about us, it's about you. It's about you being able to see this, and it's also about your opinion being marginalised and pushed to the side. We're going to have a chat to Matthew Guy, the Alternative Premier. We'll do that at the top of the hour. In the meantime, we'll take a break, we'll move on. There are other things to get to, but I tell you what, the fire, it is well and truly burning. Let's fire up here on Paul Murray Live.